This message is not a peaceful message, and so I'm not greeting y'all with the peace greeting. The base Pluto is doing what we need people to do. He's a young guy. His delivery reflects that of his age. He's not responsible to know and have the same experience as somebody 20 years older than him, let alone 30. So if his delivery sounds a bit like the early red pill rage stage, that's fine. He's 22. At least he was a few weeks ago. He's sitting out here and telling younger guys who need to know this what they need to know. He's telling them the lies. Good. His delivery will improve over time like anybody else's would. Anybody's delivery has to improve over time. Mine has had to improve over time. My son cannot speak publicly right now. If he does it enough times, within 4 years, he'll be speaking like Malcolm X. Now, this being said, I want to go ahead and tell you guys that you may be able to figure out who I'm talking about in a negative light. I'm not going to say the name right now, only for the sake of being a gentleman, but I'm going to give you a hint. He goes back and forth and he flip-flops. He, on one hand, says, don't complain about this, stop crying. And I'm defending base Pluto, so I'm going to tell you straight away, you know who you are. You went on base Pluto's recent video and you made 2 comments. And the first time, he didn't take it personally. And in the second comment, he said, you're out of here. And I came on and I responded being nice and diplomatic because I don't hate you. You know who you are, but I don't hate you. However, I'm saying this so you come back to your senses, because if you're a decade older than I am, then you're definitely old enough to understand that, number one, he's 22. His delivery has to reflect his age. It can't reflect an experience not yet had. That's not his fault. Number two, he is telling young cats the same thing that you're telling us. Number three, you can't be flip-flopping like you do on the manosphere. On one hand, talking about be a wolf, be a wolf. Can't even say wolf correctly. Be a wolf, talking about don't complain, and then you complain about the things that the women do, which is a normal thing to do because we are heterosexual, right? And then turn around and blame someone else when they do the same thing you do, which is to inform an audience, which does sound like complaining about what the games are that they play, because you're talking to an audience that's generally older. His audience is younger, but we need our message to get to his audience, and he's that gateway. And you want to come along and say he's whining and complaining and crying? It's not childish when he gets up and says, I'm not getting choosing signals, because what he's really complaining about is the lying and dishonesty more than the fact that the women have their preferences. I am the one that says they don't have a right to these preferences. Number one, because they lied about them. And number two, because they complained about the results that are in the community of their mate selection criteria and preferences. And number three, their preferences are just plain old morally wrong. I'm the one that says that. He says, let them tell the truth about it. They're not going to, so you need to understand the game is rigged. Go abroad. See what's going to happen there. The nature may be the same, but the nurture is not. Well, I live abroad, so I can tell you, nigga, he's right and you're wrong. So stop with you're at least 51 if I underestimate your age, and I'm in my early 40s. So you're close to a decade older than I am. If I know this, how did you miss it with your discount Leon Phelps sounding ass? Sound like that dude with the lisp on that movie Ladies Man. Some people call it the Hearthy Highway. And I'm not saying, even again, I know this is a roast, but I'm not saying this out of hatred. I'm saying it because you got to check yourself, man. And we all do. I do. Everyone does. Certain things work for different people to get a consistent message across. But you cannot be up here flip-flopping like this, especially sounding like that. And I'm all for listening to the content of what someone says before you listen to the voice or something else that affects how they say it. I'm all for that. But you, sir, fail to understand that you're talking to an audience of people that mainly is not that careful, and yet you still want to flip-flop and then turn around and come down on this cat that's younger than you. Where were you when he was younger and needed to hear these truths? You may not have been able to reach him. Not your fault. But you can't turn around and talk about it. You're so childish. Did you just say I'm not getting any choosing signals? He's supposed to say that, because otherwise people could look at him and say, oh, you acting like you know this game so well. How come you ain't getting choosing signals? He's telling you right off the bat, I'm not getting them, but I've been lied to, so I know you've been lied to as well. I mean, you would have had something to say no matter what he said. Which is exactly why you keep comparing men to a creature that always falls for man's traps in the forest every time. Got to be careful, bro. You're too old for this. We are too old for this. We can help these young cats, but it's better to say to them what they're going to go through, because chances are when you were that same age, you would know better. You might have been older than him when you found out this stuff. You may have been older than what he is now when you found out. And what are you doing now at this point? Well, what you're doing is you're telling. You may have, at that point, you probably sounded just like him. If you sounded like that in your personal conversations, then damn it, what you expect him to sound like on his phone, on YouTube? Man, knock it off, bro. Instead, what you do is you counsel these young cats, and when they're outright wrong, that's when you tell them something. They have every right to feel the way they do, and a delivery can't always be better starting off. You can tell somebody. Eventually, you keep doing this and keep practicing and learning more tips and things from others and strategies and combine them your own way. Eventually, your delivery will become even more powerful. You could tell them things like that. That stuff actually does work. I know. I'm a teacher. I've done this with students who are terrible at English, even terrible at Arabic. And I say to them, if you keep trying and you learn, you watch these guys and learn certain tricks and tips from them, then you'll get better. That's how I separate the lazy from the uninformed. You ain't even doing that. And I'm not only going to talk to you, I'm going to talk to all you cats that want to sit up here and say, man, quit crying about it. No, it's more like cry in private, because this is heartbreaking. This is not even natural and normal. It does have far-reaching implications. It really does. It's almost like it's part of a gay agenda, actually. Most regular gay people don't have this agenda, but someone at the top who probably is not gay himself does have a gay agenda for black people and even for other minorities. Not even just for black people, but certainly for black people. And what these Western women are doing actually aids that gay agenda. It truly does. Because there is such a thing as situational homosexuality. I don't like it per se, but it does exist. That's what happens in prison. Most of the guys in prison are hetero. Most of the guys don't even engage in this stuff, but most of the ones who do engage in it also stop when they get out and they got access. And mind you, when they get out, they may still not get no broads. It just depends. And not everybody with a prison record is out there pulling all these women. They just got a better shot than those of us who don't have a prison record, but not all of them with a prison record out here macking on them like that, knocking them down. But worst comes to worst, if they can avoid getting caught, they can trick with a woman. So no, dudes are out. But the situational homosexuality does exist, and it was a hell of a lot worse in the 80s and 90s than what it is now. So what does this tell you? What they're doing fits a gay agenda. And by you sitting up here and telling young guys don't cry about it, what you're really saying is don't fully grasp the implications of that, the wicked witch of the West lying and deceiving men about what they want, even to the point of lying to their own sons, grandsons, nephews, cousins, and younger brothers. So that the vast bulk of us will be out here trying to do what they want, thinking we got a chance, when in fact we don't have one in the West. So that we spend our whole entire goddamn effing lives being used for all the non-sexual stuff so that they can pick out the 14% they do want and use them for that which is easy, DNA. Swapping down their breeding with the so-called superior males and then having children by all the same men, and then the children later on not being able to find those that are not half-siblings. Now, if this goes unchecked, the next generation of kids, 14% of the guys, they could still find those that are not half-siblings. But if it continues on for 2 more generations after that, you would not be able to find 2 kids that are not related to each other. They wouldn't be able to find each other if this continues on. Guess what that means? This means that at that point, the inbreeding is only going to get, and I'm talking unintentional inbreeding, is only going to get worse and worse and worse. So yes, the genetic diversity and survival of humanity in general does depend on women choosing to screw either nobody or men, more normal men than what they're choosing, more than 14%. For the most part, it's been 40% that have reproduced, and that's not good enough. And no, we have a right to say that's not good enough. Those odds aren't good enough. We have that right. So maybe while you're sitting up and saying, well, trick and escorts and all that, I mean, men are going to choose for themselves anyway. But we also understand that in the West, that's ruined. And I already told you in my last video, my last recording, the effects that that's going to have. Trick and trick and trick and trick. Okay, well, right now, the prices are probably going down because of the pandemic. I know about that. Well, guess what happens because of that? When this pandemic stops, if things get somewhat back to normal, they're going to go in and they're going to start exposing the men that negotiated with them for lower prices. Because you found a good situation for you. It wasn't difficult enough for you, even if it was good for her. It wasn't difficult enough for you because the fact that you had to pay anything means you're already not her type. That's what that means. Or let's say maybe you're not her friend's type, because that's what's important to them. They're up here choosing the DNA combinations that will conceive the next generation based on what their friends think about a man. And you're not saying anything about that, but you want to come down on the base Pluto. Man, how about you fuck the shuck up? Either act your age, man, or stop doing this. Now, I don't, like I said, I don't like talking junk and trash. I'm not saying who you are. People may find out, but I ain't saying who you are yet. I don't want you to be doxxed. I don't want these bad things to happen to you. I want you to come to your senses yourself as a man of your age and say, either I need to make this thing consistent or fuck the shuck up. That's what I want you to do. I don't want somebody else to have to come along and embarrass you and shame you. I realize I'm a nobody. I don't cam up. I'm not going to. So I understand who I'm not to you. I realize. You may not have even known I existed until someone sent you this link. I get that, bro. But the message is still valid. You're old enough, you're experienced enough, and you're wise enough to make your message consistent. Go ahead and do that. And also, part of the message, it can no longer include telling young cats, quit crying about this stuff, man. No. You can say, what are you going to do when you're done crying? But this is an abnormal, unnatural problem that people are facing. Western men are facing, even Western women are facing because of what they've done. This is not natural. This is not normal. We're not like other species. This is not the way this works. We became the dominant species for a reason, and even then it was only 40% of men procreating. For what? Now, at the very least, in older societies where fornication was not allowed but marriage was, we can at least say that if the women didn't want to marry, they weren't supposed to be getting no ding-a-ling anyway, and they were shamed for it. Now, they're not being shamed for it. Instead, they're just turning around and shaming men that are not alpha enough for actually finding a lucky break somehow. Not even shaming these men, actually. They just outright, me tooing these men. Really? Well, he didn't perform enough. He came too fast, so I'm going to go and tell these people that I felt uncomfortable and icky and all that, when in fact she was fine all the way up until this nigga came. He just came because he hadn't had none in a while. These women are upset about male heterosexuality, really. They're upset about that. The same thing that gives them the ability to have babies when they want to, they're upset about because they don't have enough of the options they want. And if they did, they'd still find a way to eliminate 86% of them. If we all looked like Jeremy Meeks, they'd find other things. No one is telling them that the flaw is them and not the men who are complaining about it. Because if you think about it, do men lie to their daughters by oversimplifying it, or do they lie to their daughters by overcomplicating it? The only lie that some men tell their daughters is, baby, all these men want this, that, and the other. Well, she gets old and finds out that that's really not the case. But what does he tell her that for when he's young? Because she's not going to be able to know who is and who isn't when she's young. She'll figure it out later. Later on, she has some male friends. He's like, how you doing, young man? And they're actually friends, and he doesn't run them off. That's what men do. Women, you're not going to find the right one right away. Oh, well, women don't like, and they give you a long list of what they don't like. And then they turn around and don't tell you what they do. And then when they do tell you what the women like, they lie about it. That's what they do. Grandson, women like nice guys. They like guys that bring them flowers. They like guys that make them feel special, treat them like they're worth something, baby. He turns around and does it, and every time she's mildly attractive, she turns around and screws someone else for free. We're dealing with this for real. You probably dealt with it in your day, too. We're now learning at a younger age, but see, a lot of young guys are still being lied to at home too. So that's where the base Pluto comes in, telling these young cats what you could not have told them early on, because nobody told you, which was not your fault. But you expect him to say something like this with no sense of shock about it? He's at a young age in which he's realizing that he's been lied to, and that all men have been lied to by a gender that doesn't even cooperate with each other to begin with. Yet they cooperate on this to do nothing other than making sex difficult, no matter who. Even when these guys are 6 foot physical alphas and they're well paid, even in cases like that, you still have reality series like Basketball Wives. Are you effing kidding me? Ex-wives living off of the talents of their ex-husbands, who were exactly what they said they wanted men, exactly what women have shown they wanted men to be, until they actually got the opportunity to get one of these men. Then he wasn't enough either. That's what we're dealing with, bro. We're dealing with finding out that the entire gender of our mothers, sisters, grandmothers, aunts cannot act like they're grown once you reach a certain level of development for a nation or for a society. They cannot act like adults when it comes to men, but they can act like adults about every other subject on the planet. They can be good physicists. I've always said that. Yeah, women, they can learn physics. They can learn accounting. They can be good at these jobs, actually. Long as the kids behaving in school and aren't causing them to have to be out of the office all the time, away from work, they can learn these jobs and actually perform them very well. Women can invent. I'm not saying they always do, and they don't have to, but they can invent when they put their minds to it. The problem is that with all that talent, they cannot act half their age when it comes to who they're choosing in men. They cannot do it. And we're finding this out. And you expect him to say this with no sense of shock, a completely monotone voice, to prove to you that he's a stoic wolf. Grow the hell up, man. Don't tell him to grow up. Nigga, how childish are you for your age? The day that this changes, I'll stand corrected and I'll never mention this again. I hope that this benefits. I hope that one day it ain't true, and I hope that one day it's not necessary. Until then, the blackest hearted, blackest minded, blackest man on social media, signing black out. Black, heterosexual, male power, just because Massa Charlie and Boom Shika don't like it.